Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be playing with the Dina Wakley gloss sprays and her alphabet masks. So this page was inspired by watching the Dina Wakley demo, which is on her Art by Dina Wakley blog, using alphabet masks. And it was just putting the masks down on the page, just jumbling them up and spraying over the top. Now the reason I really liked this was it's the first time I've actually used the sprays on the canvas pages in my journal, and the colours just really popped on the page. I think because it had that beautiful base, but the other thing was I wasn't overlaying the colours too much. I think I have a tendency on the white pages to actually spray too much, so it was a really good lesson just to spray. Now one of the things that she did was just close the journal and let the other side page pick up the masks, which meant instead of picking them up yourself where you might get ink underneath them, it allows any ink that's on top of the mask to be transferred onto the other page, and you get this really cool effect. You get a double page for the price of one, which is fantastic. So once you've picked off all the stencils, you can just go in and dry it. And my next problem was I really like the pages. What am I going to do over them? One of the things, I suppose, while I really loved that jumble of letters in the background, it didn't really mean anything. So I had to get over the fact, because our human brain is designed, if we see letters or if we see, you know, writing on a page, we want to decipher it. We want to, you know, work out what it means. And obviously it means absolutely nothing. So I wanted to not get rid of it, but make it make sense in somehow. So I decided that I would add a face to it, and one of my favourite things to do is to actually split these faces. These are from Dina Wakley, they're part of her collage tissue set. I like to split them in half, particularly with this image. It sounds awful, and I certainly don't mean this in the wrong way, but I struggle to work out the gender of this image. And you'll notice it when I cut it in half, because one side looks very masculine and one side looks very feminine. And this image always reminds me of David Bowie, particularly the right hand side. And I suppose that's why I've sort of got that sort of gender fluid type thing in my head. So it's a really interesting image, and it's just funny that one image cut in half can have two totally different looks. So I would suggest you don't have to cut your faces in half, but with some of the faces that you have in collage collectives and the collage tissues and so on, just lay a piece of paper over either side and see what each side reminds you of and what different effect you can get by actually splitting them up in different ways on your page. So I just used some collage medium to glue that down on the page. One thing to be aware of, and you can see that happening on the right hand side, is the canvas pages are not treated, so it does shrink. And you will find, particularly if you glue stuff on it, it will shrink down. Now it certainly doesn't bother me, but I know it does bother a lot of people. And it can be a little bit frustrating when you're gluing something down and it starts to shrink a little bit. Just be prepared for it. It doesn't affect your overall image, but yeah, it's worthwhile knowing that is going to happen. So I've just gone in with my paint pen and added in the eyes. It's something I do with all my images, and I find it just brings those images to life. In hindsight, I actually really like that page just as it is. It's very open and very fresh, but I've been watching a lot of Dina's daily demos where she shows lots of different techniques. And one of the techniques that she has demonstrated is one called overpainting. And I've got a video up on my channel of another image, a few images actually, that I've done some overpainting on because I've kind of got addicted by it. And basically what it is using something as a base, whether it's a magazine image or one of her collage faces, something already drawn out, and then adding in your shading and your colouring in random colours. It doesn't have to be skin tones, but basically what you need to do is, and you can see from my palette on the other side, you need to have a dark shadow, a lighter colour, a mid colour, and a light colour that you can use as your shading. So I've chosen, I think, peacock, sky, magenta and blackberry as my colours, and you can see I'm putting on the paint really fine. It's still quite translucent, so I'm just building up the layers on top of each other. Each layer is quite translucent. I've got a fairly dry brush as well, and you can see I've got a wet wipe down the bottom just to dry it off, because I'm trying to avoid sticking it into the tub of water. So I'm using the magenta as my light tone on the hair, and I'm using the blackberry as my shading tone. I also go back and put some of the blackberry on the face as well, but I'm using it more as a on the hair. And just being really sketchy with my lines and mixing it in. And the great thing is, and again, it's not usually the way I work. I'm working wet on wet, so I'm able to blend the colours together more easily. Usually when I work with acrylics, because I want to layer them up and keep the colours pure, I dry them off in between to make them permanent. So keeping them wet means I can go back now and re-blend them in together and get some really beautiful shades of colour. And because I'm me and I don't like waste, I'm just going in and using up all the paint on my palette basically until it's all gone. So you get these kind of funky looking faces, and again, it just reminds me of David Bowie. I don't know if it's just me. Maybe he was on my mind when I was doing this, but that's the thing that kept popping into my head when I was looking at this image. So this is my Use It Up journal. And again, if you look on my channel, it's either up on my channel or be coming up soon. There's a page using this background. I think it's called Make Complex Patterns Simply. You can see how I actually end up using this page with which comes up looking really well. So once I've finished doing my images, I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. I wanted to have the focus on those letters in the background. And I was trying to work out what I could do to sort of tie it together. So while I was waiting or contemplating it, I'm going back in with my Stabilo Oil pencil just to add some definition back in. So putting some really, really scribbly lines in the hair, being really loose, going in and adding some of that darkness around the eyes to pop it out. And I decided to write under each of the eyes, be brave and be strong, and then put a little heart. The heart's kind of another play on, I know Dina uses that sort of symbol a lot in her figures as well, but it does come back to the David Bowie thing and the big zigzag across his head. I just wanted to put a mark on the face in some way, shape or form. So, oh dear, I really do have a problem, don't I? So you can see there me tapping my fingers, wondering what to do. I'm going in to my phone and looking up a quote on distance, and I came across this one which really summed up this page and what's been happening around the world at the moment. Distance doesn't separate people, silence does. And I thought it was perfect with all those letters and sort of those lost words in the background. It kind of brought everything together for me. And it just finished off the page. It was quite simple, but it tied both of those two faces together, and it made the letters in the background make sense, to me at least. It wasn't random anymore. There was a reason to have those letters in the background. So it's kind of probably a backwards way to do it. You know, usually you have the idea or an idea of where it's going and then you make your background. In this case, I had the background and then did something to kind of fit it. So whatever works for you really. And as I found when I was doing art lessons in the past, you can sell everything if you're convincing enough with an art critic or an art teacher, if you can, excuse the language, you know, come up with enough bullshit, it will sell with those people. Sorry, that sounds very cynical, but it was a hilarious class where I convinced a teacher that there was something deep and meaningful about my paper mache cup because it had 4 different shades of black on it, when in fact it was just the only colour I could find in the cupboard when I was making it. So this is my final page, and it was great fun to do. I would highly recommend going to the Dina Wakely blog and checking that out. I'll leave the link below for you, where she shows how she uses her alphabet masks and gloss sprays, but it was lots of fun. So I hope you have a go. Until next time, bye for now.